All right, go ahead.
Super. Well, good afternoon, everybody. The Wyoming Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission will come to order today on May 1, 2024 at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. Today will be, I think it is the fifth in a series of several Zoom briefings which examine potential housing discrimination and fair housing practices in the state of Wyoming. Just want to announce at the outset that this public meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available on our public database. And you've got Liliana here on the call today, and she can let you know where to go to do that. I think just as a roll call, I want to make sure we cover a roll call. We have on the line today. Whoops, sorry, just want to make sure. We have on the line our committee members, Jimmy Simmons, Valerie Thompson-Ebanks, Sally Sato, and Jim O'Brien. And we may have others join, but we have a quorum for the purpose of taking testimony, which is what we want to do. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights is an independent, bipartisan, non-enforcement agency of the federal government charged with studying discrimination or denial of equal protection of the laws based on race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, or national origin, or in the administration of justice. Based on the information that we collect through the testimony that we gather at these briefings, the committee will prepare a report containing findings and recommendations, which will be shared with the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And then the commission will then forward those recommendations to the appropriate federal and state agencies. It's a small group today. I don't see any members of the public on yet. We may have some join, but the same rules will apply as before. And I think we're all familiar with those. We'll hear first from Charles Washakie, who we're so excited and happy to have him join our meeting, and really appreciate that he's done so. And then we'll have an opportunity for the committee to ask questions, and then we'll move on to the rest of the meeting. So our meeting will start then, as we said, with Charles. And I've had the chance briefly to catch up with Charles on about this and ask him to, as we said, we're addressing housing discrimination in Wyoming, and asked Charles to talk about housing discrimination, Charles and his colleagues, housing discrimination on the reservation and off the reservation as it would affect tribal members. And Charles, for the purpose of the recording, would you mind just introduce yourself, tell us your background, what you do, and a little bit about yourself before you then move to your testimony. And then if you could, please give us your thoughts and ideas on discrimination on housing. So please start.
Okay. My name is Charles Washakie. I'm the Executive Director for Eastern Shoshone Housing Authority here at Fort Washakie, Wyoming. We're located on the reservation. We have local municipalities as Lander and Riverton, Shoshone, Pavilion, and DuBois are surrounding cities. So, we had a couple programs going here. Well, we just finished them. The ERA program was a Treasury program with emergency rental assistance. We really had a lot of problems with that because landlords, local landlords. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, no problem.
All right. Yeah. Our local landlords around here, as soon as they found out that we were paying up to 12 months of rent for the participants and stuff, that automatically the rent went up, almost doubled. And 3-bedroom that was $700 a month, shot to $1,400 a month, and 4 bedrooms were like $2,000 a month. As soon as they heard the program, and I really thought the program was a program to set them up to fail, because when the rent hike went up, we were paying their rent for a year, and they couldn't handle the rent after that. After the year, a lot of the families were evicted because they couldn't pay $2,000, they couldn't pay $1,400 a month. And So anyway, it was quite the thing. And we had like renters. This landlord would rent to this person, and we would pay that landlord up to for like 3 months. And then that landlord evict them, move another family in, send them to us, and we would pay that family up to 3 months. And it just kept going on and on. It was a pattern that we seen throughout the county. And so we were kind of like blackballing landlords that were doing that. And just the other day, I got an inquiry from a landlord that received almost $100,000, and we had to send her a 1099. And she was upset that we did that. Well, it was Treasury funds, so they're gonna have to pay taxes on this. And it was pretty hard to get a family in, like Lander, Riverton. They're real selective on who they put in there. And so we have right here in our own housing authority, we have like 3-4 families in one household. We're overcrowded, and we're trying to alleviate that by building, but we can't build them fast enough. And we send a family into Lander, and they want to know if the family is on Section 8, so they, Section 8 kind of guarantees their house payment. And so, I feel that it's real hard to get one of our families into Riverton or Lander if they're not on Section 8 vouchers and stuff like that. And so the landlords are real selective. And so that's why we have multiple families in our household. I'm not to let families be overcrowded in a household, but they don't have no place to go, and we don't have emergency housing. We tried to get emergency housing through tax credit, and a lot of that was funny too, because we filed for tax credit. We were the highest. We scored the highest. We had no debt limit, and we still weren't funded. And so it's a kind of a struggle here. And so I don't know. You guys want to ask some questions? I could try and help that way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Charles. That's really helpful. And I can imagine the struggle with 3 to 4 families living in one household. That's just awful. But one of the comments you made is that the landlords in Lander and Riverton have been real selective. Can you give us a sense of what do they, so when tribal members want to go out and rent in those places, because you don't have the housing on the reservation, what do they look at, and what do they use for their criteria to make a decision?
I think a lot of it has to do with past experience. And so they want a smaller household family because they know it's going to eventually end up overcrowded. And so dang, it's real hard to pick one out, I guess. Yeah. Because we were putting people in motels, and then after a while the motels wouldn't accept any clients. And yeah.
And when that happens, what do they use as the reason for not accepting?
Overcrowding, most of them. Yeah.
And that is because because they're worried that people will later, when they first rent, it's only to whatever group of people are there, but they're worried as later on somehow there'll be more people come in.
Yeah, overcrowding and wear and tear on the unit, And No.
Is
Under
there any
our ERA program, we had an application, and the agreement was between us and the tenant and the landlord, and we did cover some like damages and stuff like that, but it's just normal wear and tear and with overcrowding. Yeah.
other, so I know other committee members will have questions, but if you bear with me just to make sure we cover on this important point. So when those tenants first make an application with these landlords, do they make an application to rent with a certain number of people? Like and the landlord says you can't have more than 5 people in this unit or 6 people, or is there a restriction on the number of people?
Yeah, there's a restriction on the number of people. If you're not on a lease, then you're not eligible to be in the household. But a lot of families like have visitors and stuff like that. They have to notify the landlord, and they could only be in there, I think it was 72 hours. So,
Yeah. So one thing, at least I know we've been concerned about is, if a family wants to rent, I mean, landlords can't just simply say, well, the family's too big. I mean, that's, family size is something they really can't point to. Now, if the family says, well, we got 5 people, but then they, later on,
yeah.
bring in others, that's maybe something different. But are the landlords saying, look, we're just not going to rent to somebody with 6 people or 7 people in the family? Is it that kind of approach or not?
Yeah, that was kind of their approach. Yeah. And they wanted a smaller family size.
Okay.
But if you got 3 people in your household and then you're renting a 4-bedroom, I really didn't, under our rules and stuff like that, if the boys and girls we separate the boys and girls in a room and stuff like that, and then the parents. But a lot of them were going for these bigger homes, and I think that's why, because they knew some of their family members would be moving in with them or whatever. But landlords were they were real selective on who they put in their unit, and I could see why, because maintenance, the wear and tear on the unit and everything like that. I could see that, but it's just that it came down that it was real hard. They were real hard to deal with them. And then when they were putting families in, and then they were only in there a month, and we were paying them for 3 months, then they were evicting them and sending us another family. It was just like they were making money off all this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask, if I can, just one other question on this. Did this whole thing on, wanting smaller families and so forth, in your experience, is this something that just applied to tribal members, or were these landlords taking the same approach to anybody that might walk up?
I don't know if it was just anybody, but I know they were real being selective with our tribal members.
Okay. I'm sure I have other questions, but let me open it up for other committee members for questions to Charles. Of course, Jimmy, go ahead. Absolutely.
How many people are considered homeless on the reservation?
Well, right now I have a waiting list of about 82 families, and
Wow.
I consider them all homeless. They're on my waiting list. And so just speaking outside of the housing, we probably have maybe a little over 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's 100 families, Charles?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy, go ahead.
I had been looking at what they call sleeping capsules, where they're made in a factory and they can be brought out to your location in a timely manner.
Right.
It costs about $20,000 a pop, and they can
Yeah.
make a sleeping capsule community. I've seen one of them. They're really
Yeah.
neat. And I had spoken to a lady. I didn't get her name. She was over at the mall here in Casper about if the government can't help, why can't we go universally or like worldwide and ask for assistance to try to alleviate the homeless problem on the Wind River Indian Reservation.
Yeah.
And she told me that she would have to talk to the council to make sure that what I wanted to do wouldn't conflict with what they're doing now as far as housing goes.
Right.
I spoke to a lady this morning. You know, I'm listening to you tell the story about how you have paid as far as 1 year in advance for rent.
Yeah.
I talked to Miss Groves this morning, which she's been evicted from her third apartment now. She went in and they doubled her utilities.
Right.
She found a camera in her bathroom where the maintenance man had installed a camera in her bathroom. The manager stole her identity. And how they kicked her out of her apartment was she had 2 citations on a dog at large.
Yeah.
Her dog was running, jump out of the car and run to the building about 100 feet. And she called the police, and the police gave her 2 citations, and they gave her 48-hour notice to get out. It's that sensitive, and I can understand where a landlord is that sensitive to try to get you out of there when they don't want you there. And
Yeah.
so I got to thinking about.
And we'll have a chance, Jimmy, to update on like Ms. Groves after we finish with Charles. But
Okay.
Anything
Okay.
specific for Charles?
Mhm.
I think he answered my question about how many people he thought there was homeless there. So that was my main. You've answered that. Okay.
Yeah. We got about 100 families. Yeah. We got 82 on our waiting list, and I know of about 16 out there. We got some that live in campers and they don't have facilities. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water. But still, they're living in campers and stuff like that. And I consider them homeless too.
Yeah, for sure. Other questions for Charles? Valerie, Sally? Valerie?
I have a question in terms of, first of all, thank you so much, Charles, for visiting with us.
Sure.
It's so important to hear stories from people who have those lived experiences. So we really appreciate you coming and visiting with us. I'm hearing a number of points from what you presented, some of which pertains to family size and overcrowding. I'm curious if you have noticed perhaps any other patterns or trends regarding the types of perhaps discrimination your people have faced from landlords and anything along those lines.
Well, I had, when we were doing that rental assistance, there was a lot of families that came in, said the landlord denied them or even denied giving them an application because of their nationality. So, and we had a list of landlords that we were working with. So we'd give them that list and they'd go out and visit with these landlords and try to find one. But there was some of the landlords that were turning away a lot of people because of their nationality. And so
Can I ask Charles as a follow-up?
I
When
gotta
that
answer
happened,
this. Louisa, yeah, can I call you back? I'm on another one. All right, bye. Yeah, and so anyway, we'd just refer them to another landlord, and it was like I don't know. I felt bad about it and everything, what was happening to them and everything, but there wasn't really anything I could have done, with the landlord. But
well,
if
that
they
was a
wasn't
question
giving
I
them an
had.
application or visiting with them or getting their information, really nothing I could do about it.
Is, well, so, you know, assuming that that's against the law, what could those, did those potential tenants know where they could go to try and get somebody to help them? You know, whether
You
it's
know,
to somewhere in the state or the federal government or somebody else?
no, they were just looking at us to help them. And a lot of them, landlords were denying them because they were doing credit checks and all this stuff, you know. And probably about 50% of my population probably can't, you know, didn't have good credit. So, and all this other stuff. So, but you
And
rent around here in Lander or Riverton, they're going to do a credit check on you. Yeah.
I can have one other question about that. When the landlord would turn them down, did the landlord give them a reason or something in writing? I assume they probably said your credit check came up bad, or they tried to make some excuse why they were turning them away.
Right. Yeah, because well, a lot of them had their credit was too low, so that's why they were turning them down. And then a lot of them just flat out denied them that an application. So.
And as far as and there was nowhere really for those people to turn. They couldn't go to the
No.
state, they couldn't go to the county, they didn't go to the federal government. So okay.
I don't think a lot of them had that information where they could have went, and so they were coming back to us. You know, we were trying to assist them.
Well, can I ask, Charles, what would you do? So one follow-up question on that. I'm sorry, Sally, you probably want to ask a question, but just one last follow. Do you know, I mean, if somebody were to turn down one of your travel members and just say, look, sorry, we just don't rent to travel members, period.
Yeah.
Do you know what you can do about that? I mean, can you call HUD? Is there somebody in the federal government you could at least say, look, you know, we're hearing bad reports? I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I don't know. You know, we work with the Wyoming Housing Network out of Casper there, and Melissa Noah, and you know, we try to if someone was serious about making a complaint like that with a landlord in town, it would be done through the channels of Wyoming Housing Network, and you could call their funding agency, whether it was a tax credit unit or whether it was funded by HUD or whatever. But we give them the option, but try to help them. But I don't know of anybody that followed through on it.
Thank you, Charles. Sally,
Yeah.
sorry. Did you
Yeah.
have a question, please?
Yeah, to me, it seems like impossible to believe, because there should be some kind of legal way to pursue this. This is clearly discrimination. And also, I don't understand why they have to go through an income or whatever credit check, because
Yeah.
the rent is guaranteed by your housing authority. So I think, I mean, really, I guess I'm thinking, since I'm not an attorney, I don't know anything about the law, but I know that I would want to file suit. So I think maybe we just need to get educated on how to fight something like this.
Yeah. I know a couple of them apartment owners and stuff like that do the credit checks. Pretty much everybody does credit check, and so if you wasn't like Section 8, you'd get in fast if you were Section 8. But a lot of families are not Section 8.
I'm sorry, what's Section 8?
It's the state. It's a state program where you can sign up and they pay like 2/3 of your rent, and you're responsible for a third.
Okay.
It's like a welfare program. Yeah. They have a lot of Section 8 housing around here, and Lander and Riverton, all over across the state, pretty much. Yeah.
Can I ask, this is maybe a bit of a speculative question, Charles, but if Wyoming had somebody who is in charge of making sure people aren't discriminated against, so that you know, hey, look, if the landlord doesn't even give you the application, that's just flat out wrong. You really ought to talk to
Yeah.
somebody about that, because that's just,
Yeah.
I mean, would that there, and right now, actually, there isn't somebody that does that, but would that be helpful at all? Would you think that might at least change those landlords' attitude and
I think
approach
so.
on tenants?
Yeah, I think so. We were talking about it and we thought, well, maybe, because we have an attorney here at the housing, have him inquire about it or, something, and might turn the tide, a different direction or something if you have an attorney inquiring, We
Yeah.
thought that might help some of the families, but I don't know,
And if I could, one other question, as we're just to turn for a second to mortgages. I mean, have you tried to help, or in your experience, have there been any of the tribal members that have tried to get mortgages on properties where they're having difficulties with that, whether it's because of trying to get the mortgage or the steps they have to go through, or ways in which the mortgage lender doesn't really help them properly to get the things they need?
we have a local bank here, and what we have set up with it's called Wind River Development, and anyway, we pay for these classes, home ownership classes, and we send people over there and sign them up for this home ownership because they're interested in buying their own home and everything like that. And what we found out was I had like $11 million in this bank, and then we were sending over our students from the home ownership class, and this bank wouldn't even function with them. They wouldn't process their loan for the mortgage or anything. And so what happened at the end there, if they wasn't going to work with our participants in the home ownership, then we pulled our money and went to a different bank. And now they're trying to get us to come back. But we have another bank now that's working with us, and they're working with the home ownership, working First Tribal Lending out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And this one bank is working with us on that. But we had one bank in town that just flat out refused their participants.
Hmm. And the reason I assume you sent these people for the program is they could afford to buy a house. They probably
Right.
had the resources to do so.
Right. They could afford the mortgage and conventional loan and everything. And their income was like 200,000, and they could afford a $1,200, $1,400 payment a month, and the bank wouldn't even look at it.
Hmm.
And so we pulled all our money that we had in there and went to another bank. Now we got them working with us. First Interstate is working with us on our First Tribal Lending, and also they're working with our mortgage lenders. Yeah,
They're happy with what they're doing. Are they
Yeah.
being responsive to
Yeah,
your participants?
right.
So we have both sort of we have both difficulties around renting. We got difficulties around getting mortgages.
You're right.
It's one other question, if I could, Charles. Sometimes people do things, in ways which on the face of it don't look like they're saying, well, we don't want tribal members as renters or, borrowers, but it's kind of an easy way to get there. Either they say, well, the only way you're going to do it is if you sign on to this internet site and you end up doing this application, or you need a full-time job and we need to see W-2s or whatever. Is there anything like that you've seen over the years where people use something like that as a way of preventing your tribal members from either renting or borrowing money or, doing the things that they need to do around housing?
They, when I was talking about credit checks and all this and that, people they won't even look at you if you're unemployed. They won't even look at you renting to you. And they won't, and I think I remember there was one girl that came in and she couldn't come up with her W-2. She had to try to get a duplicate or something like that because the landlord wanted her W-2. And I told him, well, did she have a check stub or something you could have showed him? And she said, yeah, I did, but he wanted to know what I made a year. So,
Hmm.
and that, I told her I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't even look at going there, and started looking for another landlord. But she was kind of pressured because it was kind of local where she worked. It was in walking distance and all this. She, I think she would have had to move to Riverton or something else. She would have had to transport back and forth to work. So,
And-
those things come up, like that. And
Well, can I ask one other question just along that line, Charles? I assume some of the tribal members, maybe they do work for cash. Maybe they're just out, maybe they hire out for a day or two working on a ranch or something. Does that
right,
happen? So they may not have W-2s. They may just have the cash, but they don't have
right,
the record.
right. Yeah, we got a lot of people that are self-employed, and but you know, they still make the rent payment and stuff. So,
Mm-hmm. Um, Really helpful. Other questions for Charles?
Can I come back to the question about nationality, Charles? So you mentioned that with some of these potential tenants, and they were turned away because of their nationality. Can you expand on that a little bit? Did the landlords, were they just blatantly saying, we will not have you as a tenant because you're a tribal member? What was that like? What are the reports you received?
um, they didn't say it was real blatant, like they told them, but it was just that, how would you say, you'd be out of place here, things like that. They'd just skirt around what they really meant. And so it was, I remember one family, young family, that came in and they were looking for another landlord because that landlord wouldn't even give them an application because she had 3 little kids. And she had to take them everywhere with her, and they were disruptive and the meeting with the landlord and all this. And she said that he asked her to leave because the kids were too disruptive and stuff like that. It just, they weren't real blatant uh, about their nationality or anything like that. They just hinted around another way about it. So, yeah, we got some reports like that, but there's really nothing I could have done about it, really. That was between that person and the landlord. So,
So along
So
those
just
lines,
so
what
that,
would you say? I'm sorry, Jane.
yeah.
I was just going to say Gail Ridgely joined by phone, just so the record reflects. He's now with us, and so we have 5 of members.
Right.
Go ahead, Valerie, please.
That's good.
Yeah.
So Charles, in terms of those reports that you received, what would you say? You got a lot of those reports, a few reports, give us a sense as to the volume of,
Yeah.
yes.
We got a lot of verbal reports, and I think we only had 1 or 2 that was really making a statement about that. I think we only had 1 or 2, but we had a substantial amount of verbal reports. They call us back and ask us to contact another landlord or something like that. And they tell us what happened with that landlord. That's why they were looking for another one. It was like a phone conversation or they just verbally. Yeah. So, and I know
And you have,
Gail Ridgely, he's on the phone. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, Gail, Charles was good enough to join us, and we've been having a great conversation with him. So
yeah.
welcome. If you have any questions you want to pose to Charles, he's here and been doing a super job for us.
Yes, and as a reminder, Gail, it's *6 to unmute.
What was that?
Oh, we're just passing along info to Gail on how to
Okay.
chat on the
Okay.
phone. Hey, Gail, there you are.
Right.
Do you hear me?
Yep, we sure can.
Do you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Hey, good afternoon, Charlie. I'm glad you joined the meeting today.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to hear from you, Gail. Yeah.
Yeah, you too, sir.
So Gail, we've had some a good discussion with Charles. If you had any particular questions, I know a number of the committee members have been asking questions of Charles. Maybe you could, if you have them now, please do. And I'll see if there are any others.
Yes, I listened to his conversation there, and it's pretty about the same. But I have had experience as an individual and hearing this from other tribal people, and it's a concern. I think not only for me, but for the people that really need housing, especially if they're close, like Charles said, yes, cost effective to drive, because here it's we have to drive average of 30 miles one way to a job site on a reservation, and back. Sometimes it's 60 miles round trip, because you have to stop and do some errands in the town or whatever, and childcare too is for instance, at the Wind River Casino, they have a child care center for parents that are working, and and I, for myself, have taken grandchildren to childcare schools, and or they take care of your children during the day. I hadn't didn't have any negative experiences with taking my grandchildren to a home that was licensed, and as long as you make the payment. But
Yeah.
that's one example.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Any other questions for Charles?
I have another question.
Yeah, please.
And I'm sure this is difficult to quantify and perhaps qualify, but I'm thinking, could you speak to, or these discriminatory practices, perhaps to how do you think they have affected the well-being and perhaps a sense of belonging of tribal members?
Are you on mute, Charles?
Yeah. I was wondering if that's Gail's or mine.
That's yours.
All right. Yeah.
Really? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I really think
Could you
discrimination really affects the children and the parents, when you can't provide for your family and everything, kind of sets you back. And when I was young, I thought, well, by the time I grow up and everything, that discrimination, the tribes fighting and everything will all be gone. But no, it's still here. Still dealing with it today. Now it's like 40 years ago when I was thinking like that. And so we're still dealing with discrimination, criticism, and everything, that. So it's out there. It's there, it's here. And pretty much the well-being of the family and everything like that, you know, it depends on how strong the parents are. And so, you know, that's all I could say about it.
Gil, did you
Yeah, I
want to add
also
anything
like
to that?
to,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt there. I understand that that's a pretty strong issue of I would add racism too, and it's gotten to a point where a Riverton Indian police officer was terminated from his position because he saved 2 native people that were threatened by to freeze. In fact, he went and bought clothes for evidently the police officer threw the native out in the snow and cold. An officer went and picked him up and took him and bought clothes for him, took him to a shelter. And make a long story short, he filed racism on the city of Riverton Police Department, and that's right now currently the issue there. But yes, it's a learned behavior from the people that reside on the Wind River around the Wind River Reservation, and either with the boundaries of the reservation. It's kind of learned behavior for the first people that moved here, and historically, and they had the land what the tribes had then. It was sold and given out to the people that moved into this area. Goes back a long way, but bring up to speed, it's we still have a dilemma of prejudice and racism. But on the other hand, we have real good people that are non-native that hire Indians, that accept us in their establishments. Just not too long ago, back in the 50s, they had no Indian or dogs allowed in the stores in Riverton, Wyoming. So that still sticks with you with trauma, you know. That I can relate to Charles, because I thought it growing up, I thought we'd grow out of it, but it's here.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. It's distressing for sure. So,
Can I
other
ask one
question?
follow-up question?
Yeah, of course, Valerie. Absolutely.
So to Charles and then Gail, please, what measures do you believe, let's see, could be implemented to address or, you know, redress some of these discriminatory practices, especially in terms of housing for tribal members? What recommendation would you provide?
Charles, you want to go first, if you don't mind, and we'll ask Gail to cover the same question.
My recommendations for housing.
To try and
know,
resolve
I'm
some of these
building,
points we've been talking about. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I'm building 21 low rentals right now. There will probably be moving people in probably like August in those units, and then I have 15 home ownership units that I'm building this year too. And some of our higher income families and some of these families we were talking about that was trying to get a mortgage, well, they're going to be moving in those units. And then we off our we got 15 that's going out on scattered sites. So this year I plan on like 51 units, or, and putting 51 units in play. But that's not, we're right now in the planning stage of some other projects that we're doing too. And trying to house, I had a survey done in 2021. And the guy said, well, with your population and your young people coming up, he said, you're going to need 500 households, 500 new ones. And so right now I'm just looking at 51 homes. And so, I'd rather have them as homeowners instead of rentals. That's the direction I'm moving in. I'd rather have them owning their own home instead of renting it, because they'd never own it, renting it, And so I thought, well, our families deserve, home ownership. So that's where I'm moving, that's what way I'm looking at. And but we got like Travoy, it's a company out of Kansas City. They work with tax credit. We were looking at elderly assistant living out here. And we wanted to look at like 21 units to house our elderly. We were looking at another one for juveniles. And that would be like tax credit too. But when you get into these tax credit and everything like that, it's got to be self-sustaining, or otherwise the housing here ends up with that bill. Right now I have a assisted one over here. I got 20 units under tax credit. I pay $14,000 a month on that. And so my block grant is not that big because I only have 136 units right now. And I'm expecting, I want to have like 200 units, but my block grant for my FCAS is only for 116 units. So somehow I got to make these other units pay for themselves, and I won't be able to handle that. I got $17,000 now, another 14, them monthly charges. And we're talking about First Travel Lending giving us a loan. It's a 30-year loan. But, I don't know. We're just trying to work it all kinds of ways, but other multiple funding and everything like that. And they have a price grant out now where you can get up to like $75 million. But anything after 1967, you can replace the home. And when deal with that, turn it off. You can replace the home or you can rehab the home. So we're working on that. We got a lot of grants and stuff, but they're detailed to what you can do,
Yep.
But we're trying to alleviate everything and try to work with our homeless people, but it's difficult, real difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Gail, do you have any comments on that? I guess, anything
okay, yeah.
along the lines of what Valerie's really specifically, I think we're concerned about things like landlords saying you'd be out of place here. I mean, how do we fix things like that?
Yeah, I think that the best thing to do is try to get a hold of I tried several times to get a hold of the REPO director of the housing, and I'll try again and talk to him how important it needs to give the stats and update. And I know that it's a concern. I think the awareness part of the city has been having meetings with the tribal members over this past year over at City Hall, and issues of the homeless. They're gathered in Riverton and Lander, and during the cold months, it's really hard to. It's a wonder that they survive the Arapahoe Gaming Commission provided, they call it a warming house that some of the street people went to stay, and they only could stay there. They weren't drinking or drugging and really desperate for a place to sleep and eat, but they had to check out and come back later to see if they had room for them. So that was one thing that was good for some of the street people. But getting back to the Riverton, and the tribes are still stalemate at what to do with the people that are in transit and homeless, and it's where it's at right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. Unless there's
Yeah.
any other questions, we'll continue on with our meeting, but we want Charles, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of our committee members. It's really been great to have you and for you to spend an hour with us talking about this, because it's an area that we hadn't heard from before, and we were really worried about making sure that we got the perspective that you and Gail both laid out. And so it's going to be important to our report, that's for sure. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I gotta go to another meeting, guys, so.
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah.
We're set. Gail, if you don't mind staying on the phone, we'll just finish up our meeting here. So Charles, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
a lot, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Yep, you bet.
Oh,
Thank you.
Charlie.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you for joining. That was really helpful. Maybe let's go back a second now that we have Gail on the line. We can approve minutes, so let us do that. Everybody a chance to look at the minutes that were circulated? And if so, any comments? And if not, we'll go ahead and call for a vote to approve them.
They're fine.
Good.
And
Thanks.
I
We'll
just
take
like
that
to
as,
say that- Pardon?
I was going to say, we'll take that as a motion to approve, Gail.
Okay, yeah, please.
Yep. Second,
Second.
Jimmy Simmons says second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. And then I just wanted to follow up. I know Jimmy was giving us an update on Ms. Groves, and Jimmy, that was a very helpful update. Is there anything further to make sure we cover off on all of that? I want to give full opportunity to let us know what's been happening with her.
Well, since September of 2001 to April of 2024, she said that she had been pushed out of 3 different HUD subsidized facilities. And she had a lady a Native American lady that came up to her and told her why she's hated so much in that community, the Riverton community. The Native Americans are accusing her of being a part of killing helping the white man to kill Native Americans. And so what they've done, according to her, they've sent out the witches and warlocks on her. And people were buying life insurance policies against for hoping that she would die. She found a camera in her bathroom. She said for some reason, she felt like she was being watched. And so she went and hit on the air vent, and this camera fell out of there, and she took it to the manager, and the manager went ballistic on her. So
Wow. Okay.
another thing that she's saying is, like, the maintenance man feels that, he goes on a power trip when she tells him that you're not going in my apartment. And so he goes off on a power trip. But I think the real reason, after talking to her, why they came down on her was because of this. Her alarm went off in her apartment and wouldn't stop. She calls the fire department. The fire department comes over, investigates, and he finds that the alarm and the fire extinguishers had been expired for 12 months, 12 years, I'm sorry, 12 years. And so what they did after that was he has a dog that she lives with. The dog jumps out of the car and runs over to the manager. The manager calls the cops. The cops cite her for dog at large. She got 2 dog at large citations, and they evicted her from the property. Not because she was in violation of anything pertaining to the property. They wanted to get her out of there because another thing is her apartment sat over the sewer, and that apartment had a lot of gases in it. She got sick. Miss Groves now has a leaky heart valve. And I ran into her up at the mall here in Casper, and her feet had swelled up, and she was buying shoes to fit her feet so she could drive home. And when she got back to Riverton, she had to be flown back to the hospital, back in the Casper by helicopter. And because her body had swelled up, she said she had been under so much stress from dealing with this housing situation. And they gave her, like I said, they gave her 48 hours to be evicted. And then once she found a place, she got out of there in 5 days. And, but I told her, I said, they want to get you out of that town. They hate her that much. And so she told me this morning that they doubled her utilities. And I was seeing where, Mr. Washakie was saying how they're paying a year in advance and they still have problems. But
Yeah, remarkable, isn't it?
Right, it
Well,
is.
thank you for the update on Miss Groves. It's really clearly all of the stories have a particular person behind it, and it's just remarkable what's happened to that poor woman. So thank you for that, Jimmy. I think, and the good news, as we've got the draft report from Kayla, I think the Ms. Grove's story in part is reflected in this report. So I think that would take us, as I look at the agenda, to the discussion of the draft report. It may be, I would just introduce it in a couple of ways. Kayla sent it out last night. You should all have it. It'll be, of course, going out to everyone. We'll get a chance to look at it in detail and comment on it. Kayla's asked for comments by way of, track changes we can just send along. I will say that to start with, I think Kayla's done a wonderful job, and I thank her very much. I'm amazed, actually, from having looked at the testimony and now looking at the report, to see how well she's integrated the various trends and streams and pieces all into one report, and really thank her so much for doing so. I know she asked for some help on it. Well, hopefully now, I'll be willing to have a go at this as well. I'm sure we'll all have comments, and that's not to say that there aren't going to be comments. So I look forward to getting everyone's comments, but I thought, if it's okay on behalf of the committee, I thank Kayla for doing the first cut and doing such a great job on trying to take our, now testimony, 5-6 times the testimony, and put it all together. So the only, and that I'd ask Kayla, I think, just to give us any highlights that she wants to. As you look through it, just keep in mind, remember, there are really 2 pieces to it. There are findings and recommendations. And what Kayla has done is capture from the testimony and from our discussion, because we can include the things that we discuss, those things that we have as part of the findings. And what's left open are the recommendations, some of which we've talked before about, kind of generally the idea of having local enforcement here in Wyoming, rather than clearly the story that just came from Charles Washakie is that nobody's going to Denver. What a big surprise. So there are things like that, which I suspect we may have as recommendations. So it will be up to us to come forward, I think, with those kinds of recommendations. And that will be something that we need to kind of individually, I think, sketch out a bit, and then at the next committee meeting, we can talk about, or in the meantime, actually send off to Kayla and then have it as part of the draft report. But that's really what's in here now are the findings. It'll be up to us to come forward with the recommendations. But Kayla, can I ask you just to expand on that a bit and talk a little bit about next steps on the report and how we finalize it? And also, by the way, the vote, which just to refresh everyone's recollection on.
Sure. So I guess I'll back up a teeny bit, but I've kind of fleshed out the background. I think there's some areas that I will continue to add and revise. But much of it came from the proposal, but then I expanded on the section on HUD and its responsibilities, as well as the grant programs that relate to, potentially the state getting certified as being substantially equivalent to the Federal Fair Housing Act. I also added information on the Wyoming, Fair Housing Act and how it exists, but no agency has the enforcing authority here in Washington. And I expanded on lack of affordable housing because that section was really not fleshed out. So I know we got a lot of testimony and statistics from a lot of the speakers, so that has been expanded as well. But that's pretty much the big changes in the background section. So if there's any revisions to it, please, like Jim said, do some track changes and send those to me. As far as the findings and recommendations, I didn't change too much except maybe the structure and wording that of the draft that I sent out last time of the findings. Of course, we will need to add in the bit about Charles Washakie's testimony from today. So I will try to draft something for that section. Let's see here. And as far as next steps, in terms of the recommendations, you're right, Jim. A lot of the recommendations will come from committee members themselves, but I will actually start, if you would like me to, going through the past testimony and including some of the recommendations from speakers, and then maybe that'll kind of drum up some ideas that you all have that can be added later on.
Please do. I think unless anybody in the committee objects. Sorry, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So that'll be my next steps. In terms of like concrete next steps, maybe if people want to give me feedback on the current draft that's been sent out by a certain date, then I can include everyone's revisions. And then I can send out another draft with the initial recommendations and Charles Washakie's testimony and have something more of a full first draft of this report for you all to comment on before our next meeting. Does that sound okay, Jim?
Yes, of course, that sounds great.
Okay.
Maybe just as we think about that schedule, one of the reasons we had the meeting today was because I think people were concerned that as we get farther along, we were going to run into scheduling conflicts and so forth. Kayla, as you think about it, would our next meeting be sometime, I assume July? So we're before really the August break. I assume a lot of people go on vacation, and then maybe if we work back from that, I think, because maybe we should be thinking about the next meeting as a full and fair discussion of what's there. And, if people have objections to certain parts, to try and deal with those. But what's your thinking on that?
I kind of like that idea, like having a full draft to kind of work off of at the next meeting, which I think is definitely doable by July. So we'll have all of May and June to kind of do some back and forth just through email, maybe between me and the committee. That would be great.
Well, would it make sense then for everyone on the committee, and we of course will alert Virginia and Judy as well, but if we have specific comments, you know, put it, whether it's in track changes or you could scribble out a note or something. But if Kayla, if we got those to you no later than the end of this month, May 30th, that would give us, they give you sort of a month to incorporate those and get it out, and then we'd be ready to discuss it at a meeting in July. Is that an achievable schedule, both Kayla and other committee members?
Sorry, Jim. I was thinking maybe if we put the deadline for committee comment a little shorter, just because I
Okay.
didn't have any of the I don't have any of the recommendations or Charles Washakie's testimony in there anyway. So any feedback on the background section, maybe like let's just focus on that. And then I can incorporate the first draft of the recommendations as well as Charles Washakie's testimony, send out an updated version maybe by the end of May. Then you all have the month of June to kind of provide another set of feedback on like the recommendations and the full report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So, you know, at the risk of Valerie and Virginia will have finals coming up and so forth, right? I mean, this is going to be a bad time of year for you. What if we said at least comments on the background section no later than May 15th, and then that way that will give Kayla the chance to go ahead and incorporate those and then do as she says, get something out to us, which will have really a good opportunity to review during June and be getting ready to discuss it at a July meeting. Is that, Kayla, more along the lines of what you're thinking?
It is, but Valerie, I see Valerie shaking her head.
I'm really sorry. At the end of a semester with grades and graduations and all of those, it's like pulling teeth. Reasonably, I won't be able to get it. And I haven't even contributed to the document at this round. I just wasn't able to. I'm a really invested person, but time-wise, it really is a time crunch for all of us at this particular time. And we have to get students' grades and all those things in. We're required to do that. So reasonably, I would not be able to get anything in until the end of May, first few days in June. I'll do the best I can, but it really is a struggle right now.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. Everybody, I mean, we all have day jobs that we have to respect and reflect, right? So totally understand.
How about this, Jim? I actually think then holding off on any comments from the committee at all would be totally fine. I will include the recommendation. I'll just keep adding to the report and hopefully getting a full report done by the end of May. I think we should have the testimony from Charles Washakie back in the next week or two, so I can flesh that out. And then I will offer the committee a whole like month or month and a half to read through the full report and give feedback. I think that would be better.
That sounds great.
Okay.
I see Valerie shaking her head. I see some smiles, at least from Sally and Jimmy, kind of. So that sounds like it's a more achievable schedule.
Okay, sounds great.
And Gail's probably smiling. I just can't see because he's on the phone. But so, okay, let's do that. If that's okay, then we'll. If you, in the event you happen to have comments, no reason to hold them back. We'll go ahead and send them along. But we won't set any deadlines, and we'll just expect that once we get kind of that full report from Kayla, you know, in anticipation of the next meeting, then that's when we'll really spend our time on it. So that makes perfect sense. Okay. And does that mean then, should we be circulating, obviously the July 4th week is not a great week. I know folks are busy, just generally. Should we be thinking about like maybe the 3rd week in July, the 4th week in July? Any comments on that?
That'd be fine with me.
Okay, super. Well, Liliana, then do you mind as you do your poll that everyone gets sent, would you aim for maybe those couple of weeks, second and third week, or third and fourth week in July?
Yes, of course. And I'll make sure to send that to you all today, just while it's at the top of my mind.
Thank you so much. Okay, I guess looking at the agenda, call for public comment. I see no public on the phone, so we're on the line, so we're covered off on that.
We
Is
have
there
one member of the public. I'm not sure if they'd like to speak. And Jim, sorry, if you go to participants, they're listed under attendees. So all of
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's changed since we moved to the webinar. So panelists are just staff and committee members, and then attendees will be members of the public who call in. So we do have one. If you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand. Liliana, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's *9.
So looks like Andrew Lemke, if you'd like to make any public comment, please raise your hand. If not, we'll assume that you don't want to make public comment. Okay. All right. Well, I think that comes then to the end of our agenda. Unless anybody has anything else, I think we could call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jimmy. Is there a second?
I second, Gail.
Thank you, thank you, Gail. Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned. Appreciate it. We've got a good agenda ahead of us for the next few months and look forward to getting together again in July. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.